Thanks.
Hello, everybody. Thanks to those who joined early. We'll give it a few seconds for the rest of you in the waiting room to join, and then we'll get started. All right. Cool. Hello, Chris. All right. So, hi, everybody. Thanks for joining our fireside chat to talk about optimizing your security operations. We're so excited to have you here. But before I kick it off to our speakers, there are a few housekeeping notes to keep in mind. So this session is being recorded and you will receive the recording within 24 hours post-event via email. In the case that you don't get that email from us, please email webinars@criticalstart.com and I'd be happy to assist you. We will be launching one poll actually for this session. So once you see that launch window, just only submit your answer once because clicking twice will sometimes reset your response. And then we'd love to see you interact with us. So use the chat for question, or you can use the Q&A function as well to ask your questions, and we'll get those in and we'll put it in our queue. But last and definitely not least, today we're giving away a $200 Amazon gift card to one lucky attendee who submitted a question during the registration process. So the winner will be announced post-event and you'll be reached out via email. So look out in your inbox for that email if you're the winner. All right. So without any further ado, today we're joined by Wyatt, our Vice President of Security Operations, and Terrance, our Senior Security Analyst. Wyatt, I will have you go first and introduce yourself.
Yeah, perfect. Happy to be here with everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Probably nobody in the evening time yet, but happy to have everybody here. So VP Security Operations with Critical Start. So I run all of our MDR security operations services, the team for our 24/7, 365 monitoring. Been with Critical Starts going on 10 years. So I've seen us go through the iterations, the market's changed, the challenges, the great relationships. So happy to be here and continue to meet new faces and have more conversations. I'll hand it over to you, Terrance.
Yeah, thank you, Wyatt. My name is Terrance Starling. I am a advisory security analyst or a senior security analyst here at Critical Start. This week actually marks my over the half decade mark, which sounds a lot cooler than just saying I've been in cybersecurity and IT for 5 years. So that's pretty cool. I come from a digital marketing background, so I came in pretty blind to this field and learned, like many of you, just out of being curious. So I'm really excited today to delve a little bit deeper into our topic and hopefully answer a lot of questions that people have, just like I had when I started out in this industry. So yeah, Wyatt, you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Crystal, let's hit that first slide. All right, so I want to start by discussing with you, Wyatt, the unified platform, right? Trying to figure out how to get all that signal and noise into one specific place. So I think that's the best place to kick it off. What does an optimized SecOps really mean? And how does having like a unified platform kind of change the game, if you will, for security teams?
Yeah, so coming from our background as security analysts, security analytics, and keeping to that theme a bit throughout, given our industry, and what you guys joining the phone call are probably interested to hear is from a security analytics or investigation process, the more I have in a single location, the more efficient I am from a basic level. The more I have to go to 12 different platforms or authenticate against multiple different applications and services and try to stitch that all together to understand what am I looking at from a security event perspective? What's the risk? What's the scope? What are the remediation steps that I need? In order for that to be as efficient as possible, we need to have as much as we can in a single location. And that's everything from security events to the assets to what is my known visibility, what's visibility I know I have gaps in, as odd as that sounds. Being aware of what you don't know at even a high level is huge. So being able to pull that all into a single location is already a huge step towards kind of improving overall posture and risk and modeling that to your profile.
Yeah, so I guess the kind of key I'm hearing as you talk about this unified platform for SecOps is having a really good visibility into all your different data sets, your technology, etc. So visibility by itself seems like a very large chunk of this pie. So I guess how does having that unified platform actually deliver on that comprehensive view that you're speaking on?
Yeah, and when we were growing up as a company space, early 2016, late 2015, that reason itself is why we built our own platform to start solving uh, problems that became bigger around visibility and a unified view. You know, we built it in a sense of having all of our security events from all of our different products and vendors in one location. And as we dig into the conversations today, we started bringing even more information into it. So visibility is huge, but I said it earlier is there's only the areas that we know exist can be pulled in. But once you have as much of known integrations, your deployments, your tools that you're working for all in one location, you actually can start identifying those gaps based on your tribal knowledge. So it's the most critical piece of the puzzle, but without having a platform that can pull all those pieces into one single view for you, you're going to run into, well, I don't know what I don't know. So now you're running across different organization units, business units, and teams. You're having people come to the organization and leave your organization. You're losing that tribal knowledge and you don't have a centralized repository to capture it. So I think that's what's critical in being able to identify everything across your environment, or at least having a place to start. But what's critical for knowing where do I begin is where do you want to end up? So where am I today from my operations, my security posture, and what do I know needs to be addressed? And then how do I plan for what I'm going to expect in a year? And putting some phases in order to take smaller bites versus, one big push across an organization, regardless of size. That's going to be a pretty big tackle.
Yeah, I used the metaphor of pie going into that last question, and you spoke a lot about how having that visibility in the assets, right? Whether it be your network devices, right? OT systems, endpoints, etc. It's better to have all of those in one place where you can see all of that data, in aggregation, right? It makes it a lot easier to have that source of truth right in front of you that's unified. I guess the one thing that kind of concerns me when I think about that is that sounds like a lot of data points, right? And if there's one thing that's common in cybersecurity, it's alert volumes, right? Alerts are going to overwhelm even the best, most strategic teams out there. So how does your approach cut through all of that noise while keeping that visibility actionable?
Well, it's like building a house to a degree. Is not all of us can build a house in the same location or state. And what do I need to have close by to support myself or my family? What's the ground look like so I can make sure I have a solid foundation? What materials do I use for the wood and the walls and the paint? Well, we're looking at that from our organization and our needs as a family, or what your needs are as a family and an organization to make yourself feel secure and also prove that it is secure. So when we look at something just from a security event perspective, one, it's, well, what tools are sending me security events? What tools are responsible for that? Are they deployed everywhere? Are they configured properly? Just security in terms of endpoint monitoring can be a monumental task. And when we start talking about unified and bringing in your network appliances, your IT and OT, your identity, that starts to sprawl very quickly. And like we see day to day, most of our customers don't have infinite paycheck from pocketbook that they can pull through to hire what they need in order to support these. It's why they're having the conversations with MDR providers and VARs and strategic counsel to say, how can I strategically meet these goals so I, with this allocated budget, can make sure we're doing our job and protecting either our brand or our customers and our families at home, because we need that job security just the same. So when we're looking at the overwhelming nature of it, there's a few ways that I like to go about it. One is being able to partner with somebody that you trust that can bring in that experience that either is a good marry to what you have today or fills those gaps in what you can't bring in-house today as well, from security operations centers to trusted advisors for your professional services or an incident response team, right? So having an ecosystem that can be built around what your organization needs today and tomorrow is the first step. I know it can be overwhelming. So as we're talking about this and trying to be as transparent as we can, we want to give you guys the trust around, hey, this is acceptable. This is something that you should expect from anybody you're trusting to consult for you or speak or even action on your behalf. So I just wanted to get that out there of what is a good partnership. It's trust and transparency. So back to the original question in terms of being overwhelmed, there's the way that we went about it, which was building our own platform. And that was aimed at reducing the security volume. The original founders and starters of Critical Start's MDR program came from security operations centers. That's private sector, the government sector, you name it. And we compiled together like what were the pros and cons of how we've been dealing with security. And it came to the image of being able to identify false positives at scale and not have to investigate the same false positive multiple times. Being able to capture what I referenced earlier of what is tribal knowledge and what I know will be expected in my environment by a person or at a certain time, by a certain service or application, so that we can get the most out of the tools that we're spending our hard-earned budget on and putting that trust in being able to tell us when there's a legitimate threat. So if I get a bunch of security events from the tool, does that mean that it's actually working well, or is it just firing off on a lot of things? And then if there are a lot of things, now I have the nervousness at nighttime, understanding, well, did I miss something today that's buried in a low priority or a informational alert that is actually high severity and poses threat to my organization? So that's where we tackled it from, is being able to weed out those large volume of security events and sources. But then we took it another level and started looking at it from a unified perspective. Well, I had the security events. Now I have asset deployment. So I know from these security events, how many licenses should I expect to see? What's the delta that I'm now seeing? So we can get those deployed out. Are they secured? So we have those health checks to say you're in the right policies. The tool is enabled to do what it needs to do. Now I have asset visibility and even vulnerability management from my vulnerability management tools, so I can piece those pieces together. So we start to chip away at all the logistics to understand, is my home operating as it's intended to and providing me the safety and comfort that it should be. So it, again, can be very overwhelming, and you have to break it down and understand, where do I need to get to so that you understand you're staying on track as you make those steps forward.
Yeah, I think that's beautifully said. When we talk about things like, number one, making sure that we're not just creating noise, but ingesting valuable noise, right? Making sure we're ingesting not just our security events, but our environmental events. And so you brought up a couple points there that I had to jot down some notes on because they were very interesting, right? Things like trust, while also handling that large data set, that large volume, right? And that kind of takes me to my next question. Crystal, if we could go to the next slide here, I want to kind of shift our conversation from the volume and making sure we're covering all of those data sets, right, to instead response times, right? Because it's one thing to say we're getting all of those events. It's another thing when we start talking about, well, it's great that you're getting them. It's great that you're trying to efficiently sort them, but how quickly are you doing that, right? Because we spoke about the low and the informational. what about the higher severity ones, right? So in the category, I guess, of response times or the context of response times, can you speak to why speed is such a make or break factor and how it affects a unified platform?
Yeah, so there's always a bit of a balance that has to be considered when you're talking about how quickly can I get this done. We can get things done really quickly, but how accurate is it? That end result. Was I efficient with that speed? So we're always trying to push to be faster. So we reduce dwell time, reduce potential risk, remediate threats, or identify something as not a threat. Those are all in the same bucket of how fast can I do that while still maintaining accuracy and efficiency for myself, for our customers. It's a continuous improvement that we're looking to provide. The main thing that we have to have, assuming everything prior to this is addressed, we understand the tool set, it's built for today, but also to grow with you tomorrow. It's implemented appropriately. We understand where our gaps are, and we have plans to address those. Now I need to know, well, now we're getting into the action part. So when I do see these security events come through, how can I prioritize appropriately based on what the vendor is telling me? So whether this is Palo Alto's Cortex or MDE or your identity tools or your OT sensors, like we have to trust them to a degree, but not all security events are created equally. I said it earlier talking about low priority events. Low priority events identified by the vendor can end up being a true positive for an incident and be treated as a higher critical. The same can be on the reverse side. A vendor can say it is a high priority, and when SOC investigation goes through it, it's actually a false positive. So being able to take that information and apply that to our engine the way we do it is capturing what we know about your environment as we begin the relationship, what we learn about the environment as we are investigating alerts and engaging with your team. And then what we're left with is the unknowns. And that's where oftentimes you're going to find these true positive events or potentially even new gaps in your environment. Security events capture shadow IT applications all the time. They capture what should be a normal process by adding a user, but they're doing it via a clear text password. Well, it's not necessarily a security threat, but it's also not best practice. So let's make sure we get that appropriately handled and notified to the owner of that data so we can improve overall hygiene. So it's not always how quickly can we identify the threat and mitigate it, but what else can we provide with the visibility that we now have to continue to move towards that ideal state. So one of the ways we look at it is, how much information can we get from your tools? And that's why we look at bidirectional integrations with a significant amount of our tools that we do. Bidirectional would be receiving it from the source versus receiving it via a SIM. So the SIM data gives you what the SIM data gets, right? But there's a lot of other information that may be inside of that tool or even blocked behind an application that your MDR provider doesn't have access to, or for compliance reasons, you can't give them access to it. So being able to directly integrate, pull that into a unified console and enrich it with APIs to perform remediation steps or APIs to go grab additional data that wasn't included in the security vet. This is all the maturing that we've experienced over the years of service and working inside of our platform with this unified model in mind, where now the security analyst has that context in front of them, even to the point of being able to stay accurate when we are investigating. So if I need to mitigate this threat, does this customer allow me to mitigate that threat? Yes, they do. It's right in front of my security analyst. Oh, I need to reset this password for this compromised account. Actually, it's a service account or it's an admin account on the IT team. Before we do that, I need to call this person because we captured that customized rules of engagement of how you currently handle those processes. So just because you have another provider performing these services for you doesn't mean that they shouldn't try to model what's currently working in your environment. Why recreate the rule, recreate the processes? If it's working, let's mold ourselves around that and put that in front of our security team so that we're acting same way that you would. We're just doing it at 2 a.m. So you don't have to.
Yeah, you kind of answered. You forced me to take another note. You kind of answered my initial follow up question that I had, which is speed is great, right? And it's important, but efficiency and quality of the work you're doing while you're also moving at that pace to make sure you're handling that volume from those alerts is very important. Some of the notes you mentioned were rules of engagements, right? So for instance, even though you're a third party in this case as an MDR provider, you have the kind of inner workings and context of an environment so that you're able to take those actions on their behalf. You even specifically or explicitly mentioned taking those actions early in the morning, like 2 a.m. I know from my personal experience early in my cybersecurity career, and even more so having done on call in cybersecurity, that no one wants to be awakened in the middle or awoken in the middle of the night to hear about a host that got compromised, right? They'll be happy after the fact when everything is smoothed over, but very few people want that wake up. So if you're able to take those actions on their behalf, it's not just speed and convenience, but it's also a lot of stress and that value getting alleviated, right? So also a big deal. You mentioned being able to take those admin actions, which goes hand in hand with those ROEs. And of course, in more words, you mentioned blending together the technology, right, that's being utilized by these analysts and teams with the human element, if you will, right? So you're still getting that critical thinking, you're still getting that context. Am I right? Am I going down the right train of thought that you had there?
Absolutely. And I may be jumping ahead again, but I'm sure if I were listening to us, I would immediately be thinking, this all sounds great, but I need to trust and verify. So from day one, our platform and our services were built to not just enable our SOC to perform what we either want to deliver to the market, but no customers are expecting. We also enabled it from complete visibility. I'll say transparency again around what came in, what didn't come in, what's your current gaps from asset visibility or your vulnerability reports, and what did the SOC analysts do? Why did they take that action? Why didn't they take that action? What are their notes? The timing, everything is built in because it's easier for us to hold ourselves accountable to meet our personal goals as a company and your goals as a partnership if we're all looking at the same data, right? And it also takes us that step closer to a trusted partnership and advisory, and knowing again at 2 a.m, critical start in this scenario, it has my back because this is what I told them to do. I see it's in the platform and I saw that they did it, right? So being able to give that reporting and staying aligned to what the goals are is just as critical, and being able to see that. If you can't see that, then I'm not going to sleep too great at night if I'm on the receiving end. So
Yeah, no, that answers the question perfectly. Crystal, if we could move to the next slide, because I want to get back more onto kind of the threats themselves, if you will, right? We've talked about kind of creating that unified platform and defining what we mean by that. We talked about the speed versus efficiency, right, category of it, but there's still an element of chaos that affects a lot of I would say companies or orgs out there, right, who are trying to get a better grip on their cybersecurity infrastructure. Specifically, the industry term for that, I believe, is digital disorder, right? So if that's something that feels more normal these days to take from the slide itself, right? How is a unified platform going to help teams take control of chaos for, say, from like semi-rogue devices? Let's think more in like shadow IT land, right? How is the unified platform going to benefit organizations dealing with those scenarios?
yeah, it's controlled chaos, right? So if we're able to live in a controlled chaos state, we're in a better place than if we aren't able to. However, that doesn't mean it's a great place to be in perpetuity. So the more that we have in a single view, not only is it helping from a security analyst perspective piece things together that otherwise they may not have access to. For example, we have security events coming from OT environments. Well, I may not have access more than likely to your OT environments, right? But now I have that visibility to say, well, this was in IT and now I'm seeing it in OT. So we have a major problem, right? And that's in one location for us to stitch together with both technology and human analysis so that we're able to see additional scope, which then changes and influences priority and remediation actions as well. And I talked about it a bit earlier, shadow IT. So we have some organizations undoubtedly that, well, there's personal applications that are installed on business assets, right? There's free license Slack applications that are being installed on applications, right? So being able to say, well, this isn't necessarily a security threat in the fact that it's a legitimate application, it's not malware, but it is more on the side of potential policy enforcements, or it does open you up to potential usage of data transfer or business email compromise. It's opening you up to risk that you may not be aware of. So having the visibility across all of these areas in your environment around an MDR provider who's continuously looking at the events coming from these tools allows us to either engage with it directly or make your appropriate team members aware, or put that visibly inside of a dashboard for you to digest without having to redo all of the work that has already been provided the last time you checked it from the SOC or from our technical account managers or our CSM team. So again, we can have all this information in one location, but unless I'm able to digest it and understand what it's telling me and what's my results and what are my next steps and actions, then it's not actually solving the problem. I'm just having a controlled chaos in one location. So that's the way that I like to think about it and how we're piecing those together, then showing the ROI on the back end.
Agreed. And again, I'm gonna steal a little bit from what you said there. As we move on to the next slide, I actually want to say, like, a lot of what you've said is probably exactly what people need to hear when trying to figure out the best way to unify, right, all of their different points of entry in their environment, right? The thing is, it all sounds lovely, but do we have real world examples where these very things have taken place and we've seen positive results implementing these ideologies?
Yeah, I think it's not a new struggle of there's plenty of work to go around and not enough people to facilitate it. If every day you're coming in and adding things to your list of priorities, but none of it's falling off, that's an issue. I think everybody on this phone call probably has experienced that or is experiencing it, and it can get overwhelming. So one of the scenarios that we've had with a current MDR customer of ours is Oil State International. So they had a small team. They had a lot of infrastructure, a lot of critical infrastructure that's important to quite a few people, probably even on this phone call, to continue operating. And they had just been completely overwhelmed by, where do we start? How do I fill these gaps? I know the risk is there. Every other week, I'm on calls with my incident response teams. I have reporting and disclosure that's needed. So being able to come in, build that relationship early on and say, we understand what you're looking for. Here's how we can clearly solve these problems. Here's where the gaps are that we've identified that you may or may not be aware of, and putting a plan around that of what can we do today? What can we do next year? What can we do next year? And putting not just the ROI next to those for them from a business perspective, but also understanding where is their risk level today and at what part of these phases and deployments and implementations is your risk profile continuing to decrease. So visibility, having a plan, acting on it, knowing what your expected results are, and then being able to track how you're staying aligned with those expected results, I think is crucial for us. So in this scenario, being able to put a 24/7 team on it with multiple different security tools at the time, so we weren't having to be security vendor agnostic, I think was the most critical piece for them. And then that relationship just continued to expand and be able to offer many of the other services that we have today. And again, just maintaining that same concept of transparency. What's the goal? How are we tracking towards it? And now we both have accountability of each other, of helping each other get to those same goals for each other. So
nice. Yeah, you mentioned areas of risk, and I often, having started my working career in retail, one of the big areas for risk is always your personnel, which takes me to our next slide and my next question. When you're dealing with a team that might be understaffed, right, or even facing burnout, if you're dealing with this large volume of data sets, right? I keep saying data sets because it could be volume of alerts, it could be volume of events, it could be volumes of audits, right? There are so many different categories, and just calling them security events, as you said earlier, kind of minimizes the actual noise that many of these organizations might be facing. So how does having that unified platform kind of lighten the load, if you will, instead of adding more complexity, right? Because in a sense, you are adding complexity when you're talking about adding all these new entities, right? How does having that unified platform take some of that food off the plate?
yeah, so there's a few ways that I like to break it down. One is, of course, all right, we have all of our information in one location and we know what we have. And now we know the areas of gaps that we need to focus and continue to dig into. So that's the main option of what our unified platform provides. But it's not just the context that the security analysts get, it's also the investment that we've made to reduce the amount of clicks it takes to get to that resolution point. It's fine if I have all the access in front of me and I have it very clearly identified of if it's this event, here are the platforms you need to go to, you authenticate, here are the data sources. Having a run book built out is great, but having that all in one location with the access for those run book actions to take is what sets us up for success and managing remediation actions across all of our customers and then giving that visibility back to them. Not to mention, if this attack is lined up with this vulnerability report that we just saw from your most recent scans. And then we have that continuous data coming through from all of these sources. So we're not just looking at stale data, it's refreshed. We're putting those back together for visibility dashboards for consumption on your behalf as well. And then we have that flexibility to offer that from a on the go type of perspective. So being able to not have to jump on your laptop on a VPN in a parking lot of a restaurant as you're out with your family. It's, hey, I got a phone call. I'll open up my mobile app real quick. All right, they took care of it. It's nothing that I need to jump on for. That's great. Or I text another person who's on call at my team and say, hey, Critical Start took care of it, but in the next few hours when you have some free cycles, let's just do a little sanity check. I think that's what's allowed us to do so much at scale. We have an infamous story of a CISO of ours that was golfing, got a phone call that we isolated a few endpoints, and he said, okay, thank you. Looked at it, got the mobile notification, sent it over to my team. I'm going to go back to golfing now. So I'm not a golfer, but that's pretty cool. So maybe from a perspective of going hiking with my kids, being able to stay in control with that, I do it. So it just allows us to step away a bit and again, gives us that trust that the people we're partnering with to act on behalf of our team are able to do that quickly. And as we all grow in success and we want to make sure we can continue to deliver the same thing for the next company we work with and the next team, it's something that I like to preach to the SOC is we are not only responsible for protecting this organization we're providing services for, but all their employees and all their employees' families. When you start to look at it from a spiderweb effect like that, it grows very quickly of how much of an impact we can have positively or negatively in our service. And that's something that's a bit of a core value at Critical Start and is doing what's best for our employees and our customers. And from 2012, when I first started working here to today, that's still something even new hires adopt very quickly, from support to the SOC to our product engineering team to our customer experience team to our channel and marketing teams too. So it's something that you have to continue to maintain and nurture, but we see that now come in through new features for the dashboard, new alert analytics, and new ways to investigate things faster and improvements on how to consume that data. It has to be an obsession And I think that's something that we've done a very good job at, but continue to keep forefront as our focus.
Yeah, I hate to rain on the somber mood that you set up so eloquently, but if I was on the golf course and I got a call, I'd probably take that call and not come back. But that's just because I'm terrible. I don't want to talk about my handicap or anything. That's a different call. You spoke about like run books and some of the automation that you can put into place. So it sounds like when you speak on a unified platform, it's not so much just aggregating all that data and being able to efficiently work through it. The ability to actually properly utilize that team and get the value out of your team, right, in a way that positively impacts that spider web you were talking about is customization, right? So how does Critical Start do this, I guess, differently than other orgs while maintaining that unified feel?
Yeah, so there's a percentage of attributes across every industry, every organization that is the same or very similar. From the fact that I have users and they're in my environment, I have workstations, I have servers, I have IT or I have OT. But then there's the unique aspects that make you your own organization. Who are your users? What are their behaviors? What are their roles? What does their day to day look like? How do you manage them? How do you interact or provide a service that you maybe provide to customers? That's what's unique. And if you're looking at a solution that says we are one size and it fits everybody, that's just not the case. So being able to have an established out of box standard operating procedure as an MDR is good, but being able to flex and mold to what you need as an organization and what you expect to be able to deliver and protect your organization and your users and your employees and customers, I think that is huge. And the fact that we have control over our own platform has been such a benefit for us to not only take leaps and try some new experiments and see if it works. And maybe it doesn't work for new capabilities or new services we want to provide value to. But it also allows us to say, hey, this is feedback we're getting from a few customers that falls underneath the same realm, but they all handle it a little bit more uniquely. And so let's bring that into the platform. I look at it from investigation steps. So when I see a potential email that has now compromised a user, well, anybody that we're providing identity monitoring or anti-phishing monitoring for may see that happen. So this is the step in which the SOC should take to understand scope and risk and reach, and then how to remediate it. But that maybe isn't applicable to all organizations in how we reset user passwords. Talked about it earlier. Maybe some users, like a CEO at an organization, that IT team's like, nuke the account, reset them. We don't care. Like we'll shame them publicly. That's fine. But others are like, I have to have my audit log say that it was me or somebody on my team. You can't do that. So, okay, understood. So that now changes it. So I have to have that information in front of the SOC analyst to know, okay, I was just working on these 3 organizations. Now I have this organization I'm looking at. What's changed? So the context is shifting. Your brain synapses are going ups and downs. So we have to be able to put that in front and take into consideration the human elements and then the uniqueness of your organization so that we can apply that via automation or manual steps and get a good blend of where we are staying efficient, we're continuing to get more efficient, but we're not sacrificing speed for accuracy. Going back to an earlier point, I think that's pretty crucial. And again, our platform's been able to do that. And we're benefiting the fact that we've spent a lot of years developing that and learning from our own mistakes and also working with a ton of good customers who have even given us attributes of how they investigate things. And we say, that's great. I'll pull that in via an API so you can click it. I also think that's relevant for all other customers. Let me push that out for everybody. So
Yeah, couldn't agree more. As fast as this industry moves, this sector moves, you need good communication. You need those strong partnerships. That feedback is been crucial to me growing in this field, and I know it's been crucial to Critical Start as an organization as well, growing up in this. Wyatt, I know you're a valuable resource. I don't want to take too much of your time, but I did want to ask you one more question here as we kind of wrap up, and it's kind of a summary, if you will. What's one thing that you'd want everyone sitting in this conversation, listening to us speak and ramble on about our passion and love of security operations? What's one thing you want them to remember about kind of dominating digital disorder, if you will, via optimized SecOps?
Yeah, I think number one is you have to have a plan of where do we need to get, but in order to know that, you have to understand where am I at today, and not always can that be answered by yourself or your team. So building a relationship with somebody that you can trust, even if it's not the person you end up going down the road with, you at least have a better idea of where am I starting and where am I going and what do I need to achieve that. I think is huge. Biasly, I think we've done an amazing job over the years of kindling those relationships. And in some scenarios, it's perfect and it works out. In other scenarios, we identify we're not the best fit because we aren't also the best fit for everybody and what you need. But we've also had many scenarios where it was a great conversation. We spent a lot of time invested into each other and said, you know what, this isn't actually going to be the path that we want to go down. And a year or two later, we come back together and say, hey, well, here's where you're at. Here's where we're at. Let's give this a shot. Let's see what you're doing. And like, let's be able to show that value. So I think that's important, is to understand this can be very overwhelming. Your board, your executives, they're going to want you to move fast. I totally understand that. But being able to take a little bit extra time to make sure that whatever investment you do with people, financially, you name it, it's impactful, it's meaningful, versus potentially coming in every day, chipping away at something that you're supposed to be making, and you don't really know what the outcome is going to look like. So that's my high level philosophy, I guess, of what it would be. Happy to have more conversations about that strategically, of course. But I think that's the fun in it, is being able to go in together with a trusted person and say, hey, like, let's tackle this big project together. And I know that you have my back, and vice versa.
I love that. Very well said. All right. That's the last of my questions. I wanted to move on to some of the questions from our actual audience. I know some of them were pre-submitted. I didn't see if we had any in the chat during this, but Crystal, do we have any questions? I believe there was also a poll at the beginning I saw with a nice prize.
Yes, we do have a poll question and I am going to launch it now. And in the meantime, I will pull up those questions and get it ready to ask to Wyatt and yourself. So again, the poll, please make sure to submit your answer once. It's basically asking, would you like to learn more about us? You know, after all that Wyatt and Terrance has said, like, I really hope you guys walk away with some really great key takeaways, and we love to follow up with you and chat more. So I'll leave the poll up here for another like 10-15 seconds, and then we will go into Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you. And thank you, everybody who's joined us today. I appreciate your time.
Exactly. And if this is a ramble, personally, I want another hour of it. This has been great. So Wyatt and Terrance, you guys are awesome. All right, so I will end the poll and then let's get started with the questions that we have received. So the first one is from Paul in the educational industry. What is the scope of SecOps you're referring to? Vulnerability, phishing, SIM, patching, ransomware, etc. Are you including shadow IT in the solution, or is that out of the scope?
Yeah, so I think we've touched on even some of these. So from vulnerability management that we support in our platform, from the tools you're using, definitely phishing and identity. I think that was the last example I have. SIM, So we definitely include all of those in what we've continued to expand and what we can bring into our platform. I think EDR, MDR, XDR, even going back quite a few years to just standard EPP is where it first started, and then the evolution of pulling in more sources because that's what the customers were asking for, and it mirrored with what we could do. I think when you start getting into data systems, structured, unstructured, that starts to look at how are we supporting the mission of, is it a security perspective goal? Is this a compliance goal? And like, what's the tool needing in order to accomplish that? Of course, when we start talking about data storage, cost always comes into play. So how can we model that to either fire the right detections with the right sources, or also meet some of your compliance or audit requirements? Shadow IT is fun because it can pop up in certain areas that you don't expect it to. It's what's the process whenever those things are identified to put it in front of you of, is this a security risk and critical start do something about it? Or is this, hey, I don't know if you're aware of this, but here's some behaviors of what your admins are doing and pushing clear text passwords, or here's some potentially unauthorized applications that are in your environment that aren't necessarily risky, but maybe open you up to it. So definitely customization around that, including like custom content or detection. So
Terrance, do you want to take a bite at this too?
Honestly, no. I think Wyatt hit on everything I could hit on, right? When we talk about scope, it's a lot of what you heard Wyatt speak to today in response to my questions, right? A lot of what you can think about, especially from the examples provided, are often things that the tool might have out of the box, or the tenant might have out of the box detections for. The things that it doesn't have out of the box for, as Wyatt said, there's potential for custom content to fill in those gaps, right? A lot of it comes down to the fluidity and elasticity of the customization. So yeah.
Awesome. All right, next up from Andrew in the healthcare industry. He asked 3 questions, so I'll start with the first one. How can I get the most effective detection and response solution per dollar invested to reduce my risk?
Yeah, what a question. So I think from my perspective, I'd start with, what do I have today deployed from a detection and response vendor? And is that performing as I expect with or without a MDR provider, or am I doing that in-house? And having a bit of a baseline to know, as I look at new service providers or new vendors, and like, what do those vendors enable me to do? Am I moving to an XDR type? Is it also have identity? Is it just endpoint? I think that's where you start to model out like, well, what's my cost and impact today? And does adding this increase maybe annual budget, but it reduces all this other potential risk because it's reducing my time to remediate or my time to detect? I think that's the secret formula there. And it's a bit of an exercise. It kind of goes back to like, who are you trusting to have some of those conversations with it? But being as transparent as that partner can be, I think, is still the most critical part of it. So, and I didn't say critical because the company we're with, but I think that's crucial for you to be able to say, hey, this is worth what I'm investing, and show me the proof. You may get the right answer, but show your work is something I like to say to the security analyst a few times. So what's the second question there?
Beautifully said. The second question is, how can I offload my security workloads while maintaining full operational command and visibility?
Yeah. So we hit on this a few times. At least from our perspective, we put the same dashboard our SOC works out of in front of your team. So you have complete visibility that for the information we're pulling in, whether it's just endpoint technology or identity, or we're integrated with your vulnerability tools to your identity tools. All of that is visible to you and your team. Now it's just, where do we engage with your team from the critical start SOC's perspective? So what do you need to be notified about what we performed, or open or pending risks that we need your input or authorization for? And that's key to just being effective. Is, do I need to ask for a per event approval every time I need to delete an email or reset a password? Or is that only an exception for certain assets or certain users, et cetera? Same thing for, how do I control when I can quarantine a file because it's identified as risks and it's on a SharePoint? Well, I maybe don't have the ability to access the SharePoint. So I need to then call you guys, get you engaged, and be able to say, okay, here's the status, and here's where we need to get you pulled in and get you spun up as quickly as possible.
Awesome. The third one is, how can I view my security maturity and confidently share measurable improvements with stakeholders?
Yeah, so I think there's a bit of a, I'll give you the quick answer is one is there's a lot of dashboarding and reporting available to our MDR providers just out of box. But then our customer experience team does a lot of, again, molding to what you need and what your board needs or your executive team. So there's a lot of customization that we can do there as well. The bigger thing around this is some people want to be able to say, well, how can I prove the value? It's like, well, if we're trying to show and prove you the value, it's like maybe we're not doing the right thing. So ensuring just from the get-go that the value is present from the visibility you have on the team that's providing you your monitoring, from the actions that we're taking and what actions were those devices on, and being able to paint that picture so that you can, again, quickly digest it, again, from the web portal, from the UI, from a report. I think that's where it comes into play of that information should be available to you at all times. And then as additional questions or trending and analysis needs to take place, that's where we engage with our CX team and our SOC, your team and your new adjusted requirements to make sure that it's checking all those boxes. And it's going to change as either your teams grow, your company direction changes. So we can't expect to have one report that rules it all and it's supposed to answer all your questions. So that's where some of this modification comes into play that we support.
Thank you, Andrew, for the questions. I know you're on the call, so thank you for that. Next from Kim, also in the healthcare industry, do you agree that the MXDR processes are the key to success over the actual products? I have implemented many SIM SOC solutions, and having well-defined integrated processes that highlights risk are key.
Yeah, so great question. I think this is one of those scenarios where, depending on the uniqueness of your environment, it's going to change your results and your expected outcomes. So I've worked for a vendor, just an organization, an in-house SOC, and we used MSSPs, and then we slowly built out 24/7, follow the sun. And I know what we were limited to be able to provide, and we knew the gaps and the probable risk that existed. And it was a business decision to say that's the best that we can do. But we know that's not something we want to just live with. So going through with an MXDR type of process between your endpoint tools and your identity mapping and a SOC service, I think being able to have outside help is very strategic, not just financially, but you also have a competitive market where people are continuing to push each other to provide better services and more services and show the outcomes. So that's where, if I'm going to hire somebody to do something and their focus is managed detection and response and security, it's like that's all they do. Perfect. That gives my internal team freed up time to focus on what we need to be focusing on, of supporting the business and expanding the deployments and ensuring the policies. So it's being able to focus on those internal tasks and let the people who only focus on security do that job that they're really good at. So instead of being a Swiss Army knife, it's, hey, buy the specific tool and the specific people with those tools and skill sets to take care of those responsibilities.
Awesome. Next question from Arthur, also in the healthcare industry, I believe. This is a fun question. How is AI influencing the type of attacks, and how can security operations keep up?
Yeah, so AI, I will say right away, has been a great tool and a very scary and impactful tool in cyber. So from what used to be still very highly targeted of like your end users, anybody with an email, and phishing has only grown probably 1,000x since the first release for public availability on ChatGPT. So when you used to be able to very easily identify grammar mistakes or poor wording, now it's beautifully written. It looks very similar, especially if I take off I scrape somebody's LinkedIn post and I say, hey, this is the way people type and they talk and the verbiage they use and the punctuation. Like, hey, send an email that says this and this, and it's mirrored off this data source. Like, you're able to now replicate that way easier. You tag that with the automation of how they can now um, send a link inside of your file, goes to your SharePoint or a SharePoint, you get your creds, and now it's just all automated. And the blast radius for that, the public disclosure of emails and the role mapping that AI can help provide, phishing is still the number one event type that we deal with. And it's not how quickly you can remediate it, but how can you prevent it from the get-go, because it's fast. So now it's when you say this email is compromised, okay, well, how quickly now can the SOC reset those passwords, get them out from a persistence, and we identify any other emails from that same perspective to delete them from the environment. So that's where I'm seeing AI impact us the most. And it probably isn't new information from you, but just confirming what you either see or had a theory on. So
Awesome. Next question. I know we're cutting close on time, so we may not be able to answer all of your questions. But again, just a reminder, as a follow-up, we will connect with you to get those addressed. So from Michael, how to gain visibility in out of brand OT networks on devices that do not support agents, for like PLCs, etc.
yeah, so I mean, in terms of, sorry, I had a separate question up that I was looking at. Throw that one at me again real quick.
Oh, yes. From Bill, what are examples of
Okay.
optimized SecOps metrics?
Yeah, so it's the stitching together of the different assets and resources in your environment and pulling that together from different sources and different formats, and then putting that into a single location, like maybe Power BI, or you're throwing the exports of just raw data and putting it into a pivot table, or you're using some type of customer service tool like Gainsight. That has a lot of R&D that goes into it. So pulling the raw data into a centralized location like what we're doing and saying, now I've normalized the data, I've been able to stitch things together from here are devices that have active vulnerabilities and open security events, and here's the remediation status together. Now you can paint that picture as it goes through. So I think the unified platform enables you to have all of the, I'd say, kind of grunt work out of the way of normalizing data, which is oftentimes the biggest time investment that you're having to do. So uh, it just depends on, okay, how many sources do I have, and what else can we stitch together that we have many team members continuously pushing out new dashboards and reports to put that in front of not just the SOC, the customer experience team, but the customers too.
Bill, I apologize. I did not mean to exclude you. Okay, back to the question that I asked. From Michael, how to gain visibility in out of brand in band OT networks on devices that do not support agents like PLCs, etc.
Yeah, so I would say OT is definitely a growing request in the MDR space. And I would say it's had a ton of traction over the past like probably 3 years. So this is something where we started expanding into quite a bit, and we're still learning and pushing out new OT integrations for. There's a unfortunate balance between what the tool can push out from an OT environment, especially a completely segmented off OT environment, and how much data can this one vendor provide me so that I can do asset mapping from what's expected, how many licenses did I purchase for my OT monitoring system, and how many are reporting in over a period of time. So from a basic level, can I do a trend and heat map from just that information? So now I have OT, and are there remediation actions that I can get via the APIs too? So I think OT is still going to be a very growing area from MDR perspectives. I know we have a list of OT vendors that we're actually currently going through evaluation for integrations with. And so I probably would want to have a more direct conversation of what you guys are seeing from OT, and even put you in front of one of our product managers to show you a little bit of a glimpse of how we're tackling it today and where we see that direction moving. But yeah, OT is definitely a beast, and we're going to see that continue to grow on request. We see it every week from new opportunities that we're talking with, and what can we provide today versus the gaps, and how that's aligned to the services and what the tools even support. So
a lot of network monitoring, probably.
Okay, unfortunately, we are at time, and I don't want to take up too much of everyone's time today. I know everyone's time is precious. So, with that, I would like to just give a huge thank you to our speakers again for walking us through the SecOps and how it operates, and then also to all of you who registered, submitted the question, and then attended the session with us. I really hope to see you at the next one. Before I end though, like Terrance and Wyatt, do you guys have anything to say to the crowd?
no, just appreciate you guys taking the time, either early lunch, during lunch, or after lunch, and spending it with us. So happy to hear feedback, good, bad, ugly, you name it. So happy to continue to be engaged with you guys all, and we can continue to grow and help you all or your peers out in the industry. So
Amazing.
This kept me out of the rain, so I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, have a good rest of your day, everyone. And again, hope to see you at the next event. Take care. Bye.
Great. Thanks all.